Well, Happy New Year, Tim.
2019.
2019. You know, what a difference a year makes. I remember last year when Kevin Hart was blew up and was on the outs and hosting Academy Awards. And here we are, a year later, and it looks like Kevin Hart's going to host the Academy Awards again. What a difference a year makes.
It's a funny place.
Or about a week and a half.
It's a funny place. It's a funny place.
Did you follow this story? I mean,
not that closely, but
it's absolutely amazing. And I had a feeling something like this might happen, but I didn't actually think that it was that likely. So apparently, Ellen DeGeneres went to bat for Kevin Hart.
Okay.
And Ellen, and this by the time this show runs, her hour-long interview with him on her show will have aired, which was smart for her show, but also for her rep and for the Academy. I mean, like she genuinely realized that there was a breach. So she stepped in and went and she talked to Kevin. She knows Kevin. You know, they're stand-ups. She knows his heart. She's a gay woman. She knows he's not.
Which matters.
Which matters. And so she figured she's the person who can sort of bridge this divide. There's a miscommunication. And she went to the Academy and said, would you still be interested in having Kevin? And they said, "Oh, yes, of course. I mean, did we handle it badly? Like, apparently there was just all kinds of, was there miscommunication? We didn't mean to offend him or anything. Like, clearly they were just apoplectic about how this whole thing, like, blew up. And so now, as of this recording, Kevin is reconsidering. He's reconsidering.
It's interesting that
I
the
hope
ball
he does.
is in his court.
Yeah.
Because perceptually, the ball was in the Academy's court. Other than Ellen,
and they've got nobody else. And the other thing is, because of the Kevin Hart situation, and whether or not he did this intentionally and played it right, I don't know. But anybody else picks it up right now, that means you're sloppy seconds.
Yeah.
You were second. Yeah. You were after Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
Well, there's no comedian worth their salt who's going to do that.
Yeah.
Because they're all friends of his.
Yeah. It's a strange and bizarre situation. Of course, the Golden Globes. As we record this, the Golden Globes will be Sunday.
Yes,
this coming Sunday.
Yes, and Andy Samberg and Sandra Oh.
Yeah, and it is funny to me. It is funny to me that organization, the one that we consider to be somewhat less reputable.
Yeah,
which we need to cut that out because you know what, it's over.
We're all disreputable.
Yeah, I mean, who's reputable? Is this a reputable person someplace? Yeah. They haven't had any problems at all along these lines. None. They're doing fine. But the Academy is just jacking it up left and right every year.
It is true. I mean, the Golden Globes have seen some slump in their ratings.
All of these things have.
But I think maybe the difference is this. The Golden Globes are run by the Hollywood Foreign Press, which is a lot like our organization, LAFCA.
Yeah, about 90, 100 some odd critics.
Yeah, it's about the same number of people, except they have a TV show that makes millions of dollars, and we don't.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And the Academy, on the other hand, is an organization of about, what are they up to, about 8, 9, 10,000 people now?
Yeah, and industry professionals, not journalists.
And they have a lot of expenditures over the years. They have film programs, they have scholarships, they have the student film program, they've got giant buildings and a library and archives to maintain and salaries to pay. I mean, the Academy has a $1 billion museum they're finishing up right now.
Yeah, over on Wilshire. Yeah.
So there's a lot that hinges on the ratings of their show, whereas the Golden Globes figure, if the show makes us 20 million or 30 million, that's, we're a nonprofit. We'll just more for somebody.
Well, yeah. And therein lies the problem with the Golden Globes. Sometimes there was a while there where they even got kicked off the air for a while because it looked like the situation was if you showed up to the Golden Globes, they'd give you a Golden Globe.
Yeah.
And it was a little shady. They cleaned up their act though, and I think that we need to acknowledge that probably for the last 15 years or so. They have a proper accounting firm. They do all of the things that the Academy does. But that sort of, and they're pretty old too. I mean, the Academy is some not 90 odd years old.
The Academy was formed the first Academy Awards were 1927, so I want to say they were formed about 26.
Okay, so clocking
And the Golden Globes were formed in the 50s?
Well,
50s?
no, they're a little older than that. I think they're about 70, 75 years old.
Yeah, so 40s.
So
probably.
in the 40s.
Yeah.
So they came in right behind the Academy Awards as a quick one. But anyway, it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. You'll see. Kevin Hart, he'll be a good host.
I really hope it happens. Kevin has always been a really, really good guy. And,
what I would love for him to do.
And we saw him in The Upside, which is opening soon too.
I'll be on the show next Friday.
Yeah,
they'll be one of the ones I have to talk about. If he does in fact ultimately host, I hope that he comes right out and just walks right into it.
Oh, he will. He will.
I hope he's surrounded by 75 gay dancers. And I hope he does a Busby Berkeley style.
Honestly, I have not been this excited. And if it in fact is Kevin Hart, I have not been this excited about a host since Billy Crystal's early days.
Yeah.
It feels to me, and I make no apologies. I'm a huge Kevin Hart fan. Have been for years. Ever since before he was anybody. I remember he was on a Subaru car commercial where he was driving. Oh, dude, this is like 20 years ago. He was on a Subaru car commercial, and it was like, hey, drive this Subaru off 4-wheel drive. And next thing you know, here he is behind the wheel and plowing over rocks and yucca trees, going whoa. And next thing you know, he's going hey, and he's loving it, and he's having a great old time in the Subaru. And then it's a 30-second spot, and then it ends, and he does this little dance at the end, this crazy little dance. And you look, and I remember thinking, okay, that guy makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I don't know who he is, but he makes me laugh. Soon, he's doing stand-up and getting some attention, and I knew the name, and then he's on the Tonight Show, and so it all kind of built. But he's a self-made man. He came from a really, really rough part of Philadelphia, and really tough upbringing. And he's got a Twitter following that is like nobody's business, and he makes money off it.
Yeah. You gotta be really impressed with these guys.
Yeah.
Him, Will Smith is another one, who take it and figure it out, and they use the one thing to get the next thing to get the next thing. They don't stop with the one thing. That was the mistake back in the day.
Yeah.
When a rapper was a rapper, and they just rapped, and then it occurred to some rappers, you know what? 1 million people know me, and I think I can act.
Kevin Hart sells access to his Twitter feed. When he makes a movie, I
did not know this.
Yeah, because he has something like, it's ridiculous. I don't know, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, I don't know how many millions of Twitter followers, but it's an enormous Twitter following. And so when he makes a movie, part of the contract is I'll promote the movie, but you're going to pay me like you pay CBS or ABC or any other network. My Twitter following reaches more people than some TV shows. So to reach them, that now I'm not just the guy in your movie. I'm another thing.
Yeah,
I'm a marketing.
I'm a part of the advertising apparatus. Literally, like my existence.
Whereas, sure, a lot of stars are, what do they call? What's the word for it? They are. It's not trendsetters. There's a certain word.
Oh
for
yeah,
yeah. People pay them influencers. That's it. If you're an influencer, so you'll make a little bit of money to, do an Instagram of yourself holding like a bar of toothpaste or of soap or a toothpaste or something, right? Yeah. It's like, oh look, I'm Kim Kardashian and I use Crest and ching. So, but that's not what he's doing. He's stepped it up above that.
Yeah,
it is. If I'm making your movie and you're going to use me, you're also going to now regard my Twitter feed as a separate thing, and you're going to pay me. And he makes millions.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin Hart makes $20-30 million a year off of various things. It's really impressive.
And they're perfectly happy to pay him because rather than buying an X number spot on a radio station, for instance, and you hope that radio ad for the movie hits X number of correct ears, the ears that are the appropriate audience for you. You give Kevin Hart the money, and that everyone, exactly how many people are going to see his Twitter feed.
My last Kevin Hart thing. Did you see the photo that Dwayne Johnson tweeted?
No.
Oh, my gosh. It's so funny. Dwayne Johnson tweeted a photo of himself standing with Shaq and Charles Barkley, who tower over him, by the way. Now, Dwayne Johnson's a big dude, but Shaq and Charles Barkley are bigger.
Yeah, we're 6'10" and 7'5".
And he looks puny next to them, puny. And then the tweet said, "Now I know how Kevin Hart feels."
Yeah.
So
that's hysterical.
Anyway, very funny.
Empathy is a wonderful thing.
All right. Well, it's and we've lost a few people. Lost, Daryl Dragon, the captain from Captain and Tennille, and we've had a few nasty celebrity deaths lately, and we don't want to dwell on those because they'll show up in the montages. It's a new year. I do want to say I had given up on watching the Rose Parade for years and years and years, but my second year of watching Cord and Tish is so much fun.
Will Ferrell
and I don't know why Netflix let them go, because they went on Netflix last year. Now it's on Funny or Die, which Will Ferrell is a co-owner of.
So smart. That might be why, though.
That could be. I'm just surprised the contract didn't outline them for several years, but that is just so damn funny. And my wife hates it. She thinks it's so stupid. She says, it's not funny. They're trying too hard. They're trying to be funny. It's not funny. And I'm just sitting there in tears. Because did you watch it?
Oh, yeah.
The shtick with Tim Meadows.
Yes,
and
ridiculous.
Back and forth. And then Tim Meadows is always eating a sandwich.
It was
and then
so good to see Tim Meadows.
I'm going to leave early. I'm going to go down. I'm getting an award at the lodge. It's just so damn funny. I love everything about it.
Yeah, and it's almost all improvised.
Will Ferrell's fear of horses. It's just the best thing in the world. So anyway, I'm going to start off. I'm going to hit a bunch of anime here real quickly.
Alrighty.
Because we have stuff just piled up over the end of the year, and there's a lot of stuff you need to know about. Witch Hunter Robin, the complete series. This is actually really, really fun, super well animated, and not so complicated that I can't really understand what's going on, which is very often a problem with anime for me, is like you walk into these universes, and there's just all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah.
In fact, today on Film Week, I'm doing Film Week today as well. Today on Film Week, we're talking about a Chinese film called Mojin. Dude, I swear, so help me, they've jumped the shark again in the Chinese film industry. This thing makes no sense whatsoever. Mojin. We'll be talking about it on this show, I'm sure, when it comes out on Blu-ray. Anyway, Witch Hunter Robin, the complete series, centers around Robin Cena. And this is all about... It's less about like traditional witches and more kind of like Men in Blackish, and we got a new Men in Black film coming out soon too. So this is a little bit in that scene. So these, she's got a partner, and it gets into the the supernatural kind of spy genre in some degree. And then we have Akino's Journey, the animated series, The Beautiful World. This kind of falls into the travel log genre of anime, journeying around the world and visiting different places and having various adventures. A few days in each place and whatnot. Really, kind of an interesting story and saga. It involves a talking motorcycle. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of weird and a little bit speed buggy, but that's okay.
Speed buggy.
A little. You remember Speed Buggy?
Oh man, you just total flashback right then.
That's all I remember from Speed Buggy. Real quickly, Black Clover Season 1 Part 2. We talked about Black Clover a while ago. This is things continue with the Wizard King and the hero Asta, who's very much in the Joseph Campbell mold. And, it goes on to it's very Lord of the Rings, the Diamond Kingdom and all this stuff. It's actually kind of fun, Black Clover. I think they're doing a live action thing of that.
Oh, really?
Angel Links, the complete series. A little bit less excited about this. This is, all kind of space... what's better? Space swashbuckling.
Oh, okay. As opposed to space opera.
Yeah, space swashbuckling is what it is. Pirates and 16-year-old Mei Fan Lee, who's a bit of a firecracker of a hero. We also have Twin Star Exorcists, which is really, really interestingly drawn. Very interesting anime. It's an epic kind of hero battle, but it's very dark. I wouldn't recommend this for kids. I'm much more excited about the next two, Star Blazers, Space Battleship Yamato 2199 Part 2. This continues the new Star Blazers saga. The Yamato and doing its now fighting the Gamelins and Lord Dessler, and they're trying to get to Iskandar, which was, of course, the destination of the original place where humanity has to go and save themselves. So I really, really like this new version of Star Blazers. I still love the original, but they're doing a great job with this new one, and it honors the original in a beautiful way. And I like the live action, too. If you've never seen the live action Space Battleship Yamato, Japanese film from a few years ago, pretty cool. Code Realize, Guardian of Rebirth, the complete series. Again, this is one of those supernatural things that lives in a universe that it will make no sense for anybody that hasn't really caught up with this thing from the very, very beginning. So go and Wikipedia Code Realize, that's code colon realize, and get boned up on it, and you'll realize it's a pretty elaborate universe. It's a little noirish. A little bit kind of how would I put it? Victorian. It's like Victorian noir anime, maybe is a better way to put it. Anyway, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's see what else we've got here. We've got King's Game, the complete series. This is a high school thing, kind of high school supernatural, and gets a little bit. It's a little bit gruesome. It's in some ways one of these, and we're talking about this on the radio today too as well. The escape room is one of these.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Escape room is, and I won't say too much here, but it's one of these, like Agatha Christie's, and then there were none crossed with The Game, crossed with Saw, all that stuff. Let's put human beings in a sadistic situation and see what they're made of. So anyway, that's a little bit what King's Game is like, except as a Japanese anime high school thing. A Sister's All You Need, the complete series. I love these titles. So bizarre. This one is just one of those straight up domestic comedy things, and I don't really get it. But if you like the anime, here are some funny people, and let's laugh at them. And why did we animate this? I don't know. GARO, Vanishing Line, Part 1 is part of the whole GARO saga, and you really need to bone up on that again too. There's all kinds. Again, there's like dangers lurking in Russell City, and all kinds of evil is coming to the fore. And now we need to get on board and do the Joseph Campbell thing and realize our destiny. Real Life Final Arc. Continuation of the real life experiment between Arata and Chizuru. If you haven't seen the beginning of it, you need to do that. This is just a completion of their relationship and their experiment. Tales of the Abyss takes place in another world where oh boy, this is a hard one to describe. It's a fantasy adventure, but it's all kind of oriented around a very weird brand of magic that has some very specific and unusual rules, and these things called phonic stones. It's worth watching if you like that kind of stuff, but it does take a little bit of getting into. Blood Blockade, Battlefront, and Beyond is more fantasy stuff. A crime fighting organization called Libra, which is trying to take down the King of Despair, and it's basically Luke against Darth, but it's all right. Then we got the Monster Hunter Stories. Monster Hunter Stories Ride On, Season 1, Part 4. I don't really get any of this stuff. This is like higher level Pokemon. But you know what? Knock yourselves out if you like it. It's okay. It's really the same. It's just it's a higher level Pokemon. And then Nanbaka, Part 2. If you didn't see Part 1, you're going to be completely lost. It's a little extreme. It's a little bit too much on the razor's edge of what's that one that I really, really hate? The guy with the hair.
Oh, who?
The Dragon Ball guy.
Oh, Dragon Ball.
This is a little bit too much on the like the punky Dragon Ball edge. Excuse me. It takes place in a prison, and it's all kind of it's like if they dropped everybody from Dragon Ball into a prison. That's the only way I can describe this. Anyway, I'm not hugely a fan of this, but some people are, so go for it. Nanbaka Part 2. And let's see, want to make a quick mention also. I'll save some of this anime for next week as well, but I want to make mention of three really, really interesting titles from the Right Stuff. Well, actually, 2 from the Right Stuff. Let me get to the 2 from the Right Stuff. 1 more from Funimation. But the 2 from Right Stuff, I'm going to do this. Gundam Mobile Fighter G, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Mobile Fighter G, this is part of the Endless Gundam universe. And this all takes place now in Century 60. And centers around a Gundam fight tournament.
Gundam.
And normally I would say bone up on your Gundam, but you kind of don't. This is very, very self-contained. And it's actually really, really interesting. It reminded me of. Did you ever see the old martial arts films, Kill or Be Killed and Kill and Kill Again?
Oh yeah,
with James Ryan, the New Zealand gymnast who became kind of a martial arts thing for a moment or two.
Yeah, about early '90s.
Mid-90s, yeah, something like that. It's I want to say 80s.
Oh,
80s, more mid 80s.
Okay.
Anyway, actually, really, really kind of fun. Actually, those movies have not aged terribly well, but this is a little bit in that kind of vein, except with Gundam stuff. With the whole with the suits and all the gear and the weapons, and it's actually really a lot of fun. I'm surprised they haven't done this before. Better than Transformers, that's for sure. So you get 24 episodes on episodes 1 through 24 on Volume 1, and then 25 through 49 on Volume 2. And there are even some commercials on here and a lot of fun stuff. So this is some of the better Gundam stuff that I've seen in a long time because it manages to be so self-contained and is not so completely immersed in the Gundam universe that you need to reference a lot of other stuff. So that's Mobile Fighter G, Volumes 1 and 2 from Right Stuff. And you want to actually go and get that at the Right Stuff site. And the Right Stuff site is rightstuffanime.com, and that's stuff with 1 F. rightstuffanime.com, 1 F. Go there and check that stuff out. That's the best place to go. Tim, let's go into new movies.
Let's do some new movies?
Yep.
All righty. Some of this stuff is actually pretty daggum new.
Yeah.
Including some stuff that we were considering.
Some of the stuff. That one right there that you have
White
in your
Boy
hands
Rick
was supposed to be an award contender.
That's what I was thinking about some of these. How they did not seem to quite make the cut. White Boy Rick, of course. Matthew McConaughey.
True story.
True story. And a kid named Richie Merritt. This was this kid's Richie Merritt. Saw the debuting film. He's playing the titular character, White Boy Rick. Matthew McConaughey plays his father. True story of this kid who became a police informant back in the 80s.
Yep.
Blue collar kind of family. Then he became a dealer, and then the cops kind of abandoned him. And anyway, he ends up going to prison for a really, really long time. But it's just a remarkable sort of Detroit crack epidemic story of when crack hit Detroit and everything just went bananas, and the drug took over everything. The cops are kind of crooked, and so is everybody else. But this movie did not seem to catch on the way they thought it might.
I have my feeling is the movie was too grungy.
Yeah.
It was too grungy. Not that anybody wants that story.
Detroit in the 80s.
No, I mean, not that you can take that milieu and make it look glamorous. But there is a way of making it sufficiently palatable for an audience, because you're watching a movie. You don't want somebody to spit in your face.
Yeah.
And this kind of is a little bit too down and dirty, too grungy. And I kept thinking, okay, what are some? Well, okay, Ridley Scott, An American Gangster. That had
Washington,
had grit,
Hustle.
Yeah,
the one with
exactly. And there's a way of giving it a little bit of a cinematic sheen without sort of glamorizing it, without taking away the necessary grit in the story. This just was too much. It was really unpleasant to watch.
Yeah, Piper Laurie and Bruce Dern show up in the film. Hey, to me, the problem was no likable characters. At the end of the day, what we're supposed to do is identify with this kid.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't like this guy. Put his ass in prison. It's okay with me. Yeah, I got no problem with him at all. Go ahead.
No, I was going to hit some 4Ks here.
Well, I'll knock out a couple of these. Ride. Bella Thorne had a good run this past year. Yeah. This was another one that was on the list that we took a look at. Jesse T. Usher. Interesting sort of shape. Will Brill in the movie. A guy driving for a ride-sharing service picks up this beautiful a young woman, hangs out with her, hooks up with another friend who's a little looser than he is, and they go on one of those sort of wild nights where this guy simply has a sort of twisted sort of idea of what fun is, and they have to figure out how they're going to survive this knucklehead. It's kind of fun in that way, old school kind of way. The only special feature is an original short film. So good performances here, though. Bella Thorne and Jesse T. Usher. Good work. Alpha. I rather enjoyed this quite a bit. Throwback to the sort of Jack London, novels and eventually movies of back in the day.
One of the Hughes brothers did this.
Yeah, exactly. Albert. And it's just a neat sort of story.
Why aren't they doing movies together anymore?
I don't know. Although maybe they just want to go their own. They didn't want to Coen brother up.
Yeah.
One of those kind of things. I have my own sort of set of ideas.
Yeah.
So this is a movie set during the Ice Age. Young man goes out hunting with the Alpha tribe.
Yeah.
He gets injured, and as it happens back in the day, is left for dead. He survives, hooks up with a wolf, a lone wolf, also abandoned by its pack, and he and this wolf forged their way. And I got to tell you, this was moving. Again, Jack London, all those Ethan Hawke movies that got that White Fang and all of that.
Yep.
We're right there with this. It's really a lovely movie. It was not a movie that we were talking about much this year in terms of award stuff. I think that's not really fair because this is pretty cool. And anyway, this includes the director's cut and the original theatrical version.
Nice.
As well as several other special features. So check that out if you can. Slender Man. So the story of the Slender Man popped up. I don't know, I guess it's been around a really long time. It's very creepy.
And those girls,
who actually engaged in. So anyway, these people took that little actual news item about this character that became an internet meme called the Slender Man, which actually led to some fairly tragic things happening. They took that and devised this little story, which I suppose is sort of, I don't know, Blair Witch-esque or something like that. Basically, it's a small town in Massachusetts. You have these friends. They do this ritual because they want to actually debunk the lore of the Slender Man, but then one of them goes missing, and the question is, did they actually invoke the Slender Man and get one of themselves killed? It's a creepy story in real life. I don't know if this movie is as creepy as what actually happened.
That thing you got there next is bananas.
Obamaland, Rise of the Trump Publicans. Is that what it says?
That is a bananas, low budget, really bad, but kind of entertainingly bad.
Remotely
movie.
Entertaining, but it's so badly written.
They sent I forgot to bring it, but they sent us one of those caps.
Oh, really? Thank you. Make America Not Great Again is what it says with the red cap with the thing in it. He's a Muslim. He's a Kenyan. He's back. So the idea is that President Trump is mysteriously killed by falling off of Trump Tower or something. I don't know what the hell it is. Like that. And Obama comes back and declares himself president for life. And here we are 40 years later.
Yeah.
And
there's a revolution in the making with the Trump public.
To try to bring him down.
It's crazy.
Because we live in a gunless, godless America renamed Obama-land.
It's just bizarre.
It's nuts, and it's actually not very good.
It's just silly.
It's silly.
This is one of those revenge, the attack Killer Tomatoes kind of things, right? Where you just sort of laugh it off and you just go,
you can't.
Bravo for just going out there and letting it all hang out. It's terrible, but you have no shame, and that's the thing.
Politics is kind of stupid. I rather enjoyed the Equalizer 2, Denzel's follow-up to the Equalizer.
It's not like the Equalizer.
It's better than the Equalizer.
Which
was sort of interesting to me. Same guy playing the same guy. He's living in this apartment complex. A couple of interesting things are going on. Melissa Leo, who plays his sort of handler sort of person, is investigating a crime. Something happens to her. This sets him off. Meanwhile, there's a young black boy who has moved into that building where he lives, and he has this whole relationship with this kid who's painting this mural on the wall, and that's the most interesting part of this movie.
Yeah, it is.
He becomes the surrogate father to this kid, but because he is juxtaposed to Denzel Washington, who is this guy, things happen. The thing that I like about this movie, all the way through this movie, Denzel Washington tells everyone he has to confront exactly why and how he's going to kill them. He wants to make sure that they know why.
Yep.
You know what you did.
Yep.
You did it. You know you did it.
Yep.
Now I'm going to have to kill you. This is how I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And that's the guy that Robert McCall is. I'm not killing anybody. These people are basically killing themselves.
True.
But they're using me to do it. And that's what I like about this movie, The Equalizer 2. A lot of fun there. Assassination Nation. This was sort of like The Purge. I mean, you know, it's not the greatest movie in the world, but I kind of like the girl power thing that's going on. They put the guns in the girls' hands.
It had a bit of a thing that helped you get over the hurdle of how derivative and kind of exploitative it was.
A little bit of Mean Girls, a little bit of The Purge, but you know, but it's not. You know, the politics aren't all that goofy. And hey, hot chicks with guns, I'm okay with that. I just don't have any problem with that. I'm sorry. That was good when I was 14.
Yeah.
And
even
it still is
better now.
Monster Party. I don't know. This was sort of weird too. Not particularly good. Either these people posing as caterers at this big fancy mansion out in Malibu are really thieves. They're going to case the place and rob the place. What they don't know is that all of the people at the party at the mansion are sort of quote unquote recovering serial killers.
Yeah.
And one of them just can't stop himself. So anyway, you end up with one of those. Not a lot on this. They should have probably popped a few special features on this and made it a little bit more fun. Robin Tunney is in it though, and I always adore me some Robin Tunney.
Yeah, for sure.
Can't go wrong with her. Ken. I don't know. This was okay. Dennis Quaid pops up in this thing, and this is from the producers of Arrival and Stranger Things.
That's interesting. I missed this one.
Well, you know, it's a little kid. This guy recently gets released from prison. He's going to go back and hang out with his little adopted brother, and they go on the run with this kind of crazy criminal behind them, played by James Franco of all people, because James Franco could possibly be in any movie at any time. You just never know.
Yep.
You just never know. You're watching the movie, and there's James Franco. Anyway, Eli, this little black kid, is destined to become sort of a hero. This has a pretty good cast in it, man. I mean, you got Zoe Kravitz in this thing, who's in the Road Warriors movie not too terribly long ago, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, but it just didn't seem to catch on, which is a little bit disappointing. Ken.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. Not everything works out. The last two I'm going to knock off kind of go together, which is why I held them out for one another. The one is mid-'90s, written and directed by Jonah Hill, about more or less his semi-autobiographical experiences as a sort of punk skateboard kid in the mid-'90s.
Which I never would have thought of him.
Yeah, you know, because frankly, you know, big kid for a skateboard.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that's that period I know. This is all post-me.
Yeah.
But I remember watching these kids.
I remember been mid-'70s.
Yeah, for us. And I remember watching these kids all over LA in the 90s. I remember them in those swimming pools out there, driving the cops crazy in all those abandoned houses, and they would skateboard through the swimming pools.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember those Larry Clark movies, which Larry Clark made movies that were more or less about these kids.
Yeah.
And I will give Jonah this. These kids are all obnoxious, sexist, ever so slightly racist sometimes, and he put all that in this movie. They're not evil kids.
No.
And they have a great affection for each other. But as human beings in the world, they weren't the best humans in the world, and I appreciate it. I appreciate that he knew that.
He didn't pull his punches.
He didn't pull his punches about who they were.
It's not the greatest movie. I had hoped that his directing debut would have been a little bit more ambitious. I thought it might have been an awards contender. It turned out not to be. But it's worth watching.
Yeah,
it's worth watching.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
It captures a moment, that's for sure. Interesting to me that the last movie I'm going to talk about with this group, Skate Kitchen, a film by Crystal Mosel, is the exact same film in reverse. It's about skateboarders, and you got this young girl. She's living in New York, and she stumbles into these group of other girls who skateboard, and they get together and they form this friendship, and it's a really deep culture kind of thing. Exactly what's going on in mid-'90s, except for these young women, because they are in fact girls, aren't mean, aren't nasty, aren't particularly sexist or homophobic or racist. And it really is just about how they've all got each. Now they're obnoxious, you know, but they're not obnoxious in a way. They're obnoxious in a way of where they're claiming their individuality.
Yeah.
They're just claiming their rights as human beings because they've been sort of pushed down as girls and all that kind of stuff. They're claiming their own rights. They're not attacking anybody else. Really interesting the way basically the same movie explores these two cultures and finds completely different things. They look like they're the same, but they're not.
And soon we are going to hopefully get the documentary, The United Skates.
Ah, yes.
Which we talked about on Film Week not long ago, which is not skateboarding, which is about roller skating and the role of the roller skate rink as kind of a center of urban culture.
Well, that was a big part of my life,
Not
in black cultures, that's funny.
And that's what it's about. And it's a great doc, so I'm looking forward to talking about that here because we talked about that on Film Week. It was one of my favorite films of the year. It made my second 10 for those who've gone online and at cinegods.com and seen my silly top 10. Here we're going to get into some 4K. We got a 4K giveaway. Giving away 2 copies of Mission Impossible Fallout on 4K, courtesy of Paramount. Thank you, Paramount. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and send us, we talked about that end of last year. Go ahead and send us an email with your name and address to gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com. Name and address in the body of the email, and just put Fallout in the subject line, Fallout, one word, Fallout. And by the time the 13th rolls around, we are going to close this contest. So make sure your emails get to us date stamped by January 13th. And other 4Ks this week, 25th anniversary of Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Can you believe it's been 25 years?
I remember the screening the night we went to the screening.
I did too.
It's also, wow.
I did too.
Me, you, Bridget, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I remember I was going to bring my mother to the screening. My mother, of course, being a World War II refugee. And, because I'd taken her to see Hope and Glory years earlier in 1987. And which she enjoyed because that was sort of the British version of her childhood experience. Yay, air raids, we don't have to go to school, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But by the time Schindler's List rolled around, that was pushing different buttons.
Yeah.
And I remember her very well saying, thank you, but no thanks. I've seen enough killing in my life.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing.
That hit me hard.
It was an interesting thing. That movie obviously moved me quite deeply, as it did everyone. But I remember thinking to myself at the time, have we covered this? Are we done now? Because it seems to me we have to come around a corner. That's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Plainly, I was wrong.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting the way these things sort of come to you. At that particular moment in history, I thought, okay, I think we got it.
Well, I mean, you look back on this, and it's really an amazing cast. Still, Ray Fiennes was a newcomer at the time. Ben Kingsley was not. Liam Neeson was not, but no one had seen him do this before. Yeah. And it holds up, man. It really, really does hold up. I have a few issues with it, but man, over time, I just don't even want to go there. The movie has really improved with time. And it has some wonderful special features on the Blu-ray. The 4K version of this is just not to be believed. It's to die for. It is just the best black and white I've ever seen. And it retains the grain of the film, and it's beautiful. But they have a 25 years later documentary, which is great. They have a feature-length doc called Voices from the List, which is all actual Holocaust survivors and their testimonies. That is just so deeply moving. And there's more than that. It's great. If you don't have this, you don't love movies.
It's a funny thing. In the little movie that I made, I allude to a great many movies because of why the hell shouldn't I?
Of course.
And one of the big allusions is to that red coat.
That red coat. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. I've read the script. We have a couple of just beautiful IMAX movies that have been transferred to 4K. And it's not like IMAX in your living room, but it's pretty close. Journey to the South Pacific and A Beautiful Planet. One of them's in orbit and one of them's in the oceans. I have to say, I think Journey to the South Pacific is the best because I love the South Pacific. I've never actually been. Dying to go. Will go one day, but man, does this make it just look beyond beautiful. It is absolutely fantastic. Underwater, the reefs, the sea life, everything. It's gorgeous beyond belief and unbelievably well photographed.
Go soon because in years, a lot of that's going to be actually underwater.
Yeah. Beautiful Planet is also great, narrated by Jennifer Lawrence. This looks at the Earth from orbit and uses photography from the space station, from the Hubble. I mean, it's just really, really amazing, and you realize how extraordinary this planet is and how fragile. And kind of how, it literally is a grain of sand in the universe. Talking about Kevin Hart, Night School.
Yeah.
with Tiffany Haddish, and boy, that New Year's Eve thing of hers was really unfortunate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw her talking about it, and you know, she talked about how all comedians have a bad night. Yeah, but you don't want it to be on New Year's Eve.
No,
You know, that's not a. That's
but
not
I still love her.
Oh,
She's still great.
she's funny. She's funny in that movie.
She's great in this movie. Kevin Hart is great in this movie. Tiffany Haddish is taller than Kevin Hart. That's the thing that I love. Not in the artwork, but he's hiding in a locker there. No, I think Night School is actually a really, really funny movie. It's funnier than you might imagine, and it's just two great comic talents, and really, really killing it. They don't make comedies like this anymore. This also includes an extended cut, not just theatrical cut, extended cut, which is basically the same.
Yeah,
I don't know what the difference is.
Jokes are a little longer. That's all.
That's all. But what a great couple of comedy talents. That was a lot of fun. Also on 4K is the new Halloween. I don't know what the point of this is. I know a lot of other people really, really like this. David Gordon Green, the man who made George Washington, is now making a remake of Halloween. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I don't understand
his whole
why
career.
He made
I don't understand
those dumb comedies.
Your Highness, and
I
don't
get it.
If you've never seen George Washington, though, which is a deeply moving sort of existential exploration of a young boy, these young children.
Which is an amazing debut.
Yeah, you know, beautiful in every possible way. And then he made one or two other decent dramas. Snowbirds, I seem to remember. But then it just goes left with all of this other stuff. Some of which were big hits.
Yeah.
So, you know.
True.
There you go.
Just got weird. And then we also we have an interview, by the way, that we're going to have at the end of the show. We have an interview. You're all going to be very excited. It ties into a documentary that we're going to talk about. But stay tuned. Just stay tuned. Hellfest is out on 4K. I'm not at all sure why. Seriously, you know. So we had Bloodfest, which was another film that came out a few weeks earlier. Let me distinguish them for you. Bloodfest is about a bunch of kids who go to a carnival that's supposed to be like referential about horror films, and then of course something happens and all the things actually do kill you. Everything there really kills you.
Yeah.
Hellfest is totally different. Hellfest is totally different. This is about a bunch of kids who go to a carnival celebrating Halloween, and there's one serial killer who's actually there. So in one, it's the whole carnival that starts killing you. In this one, it's the one actual serial killer.
Yeah.
I want to underline these two movies are totally different, and they are nothing at all alike. You know what? People get killed. It just is what it is.
It's just the nature of fest.
It's just so
you have
stupid.
a fest, somebody's gonna get killed.
It's just so stupid. Let's go into some catalog titles real quickly. TwilightTimeMovies.com. That's where you go for your Twilight Time fix. And Twilight Time over the last few weeks has released a lot of great stuff. A lot of really great stuff. Satan Never Sleeps. Is a really, really kind of a lost film in many respects. This is a Leo McCarey movie from 1962, the last film that Leo McCarey ever directed, and a really unsung, lost performance by William Holden in it, along with Clifton Webb, who are a couple of American priests in China during the revolution, taking place in 1949, when communism is sweeping China and the Chinese Republic is falling, and there's a bit of a silly romance in this thing that reminds me a little bit too much of Love Is a Many Splendored Thing. However, William Holden is more appealing than Humphrey Bogart is in that. And instead of having a white actress play Asian, they actually have France Nguyen play the part. So that I appreciated, because France Nguyen was great on Star Trek. If anybody ever saw that, in Elan of Troy, oh my gosh, she was great, fantastic. But anyway, that's a little bit silly, but nonetheless, it's considering that it's based on a really bad novel by Pearl S. Buck, it makes for a pretty good film, and that's mainly because of Leo McCarey. Also from Twilight Time, Anne of the Thousand Days, which is an absolutely great movie. This is from 1969, one of the last great movies of the 60s. Irene Pappas, of all people, is in this, but it's really Geneviève Bujold who plays Anne. Is just absolutely wonderful. Richard Burton plays King Henry VIII. Geneviève Bujold is Anne Boleyn. and Charles Jarrett directs the daylights out of this thing. It's a really, really terrific period film. Not as good, obviously, as A Man for All Seasons, which was the Henry VIII movie of a few years earlier with Robert Shaw playing Henry VIII. But boy, this is a really, really great movie. Really fun, 2.5 hours, just a great period film produced by the great Hal Wallace. Really terrific. Another movie that gets kind of falls between the cracks a little bit is A Man Called Peter,
Yeah.
which was made in 1955 based on the Catherine Marshall 1951 book about her husband, Peter Marshall, who's a kind of a legendary preacher at the time. And it's a very interesting movie about faith. They don't make major studio films about faith figures like this anymore. And this is probably the last really significant one that they did make, at least about a religious figure that's not taken from scripture or something like that. Really worth checking out. If you've never heard of Peter Marshall, he's a really important figure, and this is a really, really interesting movie about it. Richard Todd stars along with Gene Peters and Marjorie Rambeau. It's a really, really good film, and kind of, directed by Henry Koster. Fell between the cracks and kind of fell off the radar a lot. Antony and Cleopatra with Charlton Heston and Hildegard Neal. I want to like this more. Heston directed this himself in 1972, kind of capitalizing on his second career renaissance when he was making all those sci-fi films. There was the Chuck Heston of the Ben-Hur era and the Ten Commandments era, and then he kind of aged a little bit, and then he came back grizzled, making Planet of the Apes and Soylent Green and Omega Man, and he got a little cachet again and decided he was going to make this. And I really wish this were a better film. This includes a little making of thing with his son Fraser Heston on it, as well as an audio commentary with Lee Pfeiffer and Paul Scrabo, who are film historians. More interesting for the commentary than the actual film, I would say. Oklahoma Crude. Not a terribly good movie, but a really fantastic cast. George C. Scott, Faye Dunaway, John Mills, Jack Palance, all do really fantastic work. Directed by Stanley Kramer with his usual total lack of subtlety. This is like Stanley Kramer saw Giant and said, that's a little too subdued. We need to turn that up to 15. And that's what he did. But it's nicely shot, and it's got some great Henry Mancini music. And really,
like all Stanley Kramer movies, it has a message.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
And then we've got Black Widow, which of course is kind of a cool hip noir from 1954. It's written and directed by Nunnally Johnson, who's one of the all-time legendary screenwriters. But it's kind of a gentle noir in some respects. But Gene Tierney is fantastic in it. Ginger Rogers is great. Van Heflin. It's just it's a really, really fun cast. Not as dark as it probably should be. But it's it's got some rough edges that are fun. And then last on the Twilight Time list here is Short Night of Glass Dolls, which is I never would have expected anybody to resurrect this. I barely even remember this. Aldo Lado, Italian director, made this in 1971, and the only thing that I remember about this at the time was that it just had an unbelievable cast of beautiful women in it. One of whom was Ingrid Thulin, who is just absolutely incredibly beautiful. That's pretty much all I remember about it. It's a murder mystery. It's kind of an obscure film that sort of it fell at the end of a giallo moment. It's kind of an interesting thriller. I think some people will probably enjoy it, but it really is a bit of an obscure one. The only significant thing about it, and what is nice here, is it has an isolated music track for the Ennio Morricone score, which I do not believe is available on a CD or download. So it may be the only way that you can get the score. So that is a Short Night of Glass Dolls.
Wow.
Tim, hit us with the Arrow stuff.
A couple of quickies here. The first one is Bloody Birthday, 1981 movie by a director named Ed Hunt. This is okay little movie. It's about these girls who were born at the height of some sort of eclipse with the moon, and the Saturn was blocked, blah, blah, blah. 10 years later, they're crazy as hell, killing everybody. That's all okay. More interesting is that Ed Ed started making movies back in the late 60s and sort of hung on for a long time. Knocked out a movie in 2014, which I remember talking about on our radio show, a Dracula movie with Eric Roberts. So,
No kidding.
yeah. So, Ed hung in there for a long time. More interesting is it's Willie Dynamite, 1974, height of the black exploitation cinema period. A lot of people think of this as the best of the black exploitation films of the period.
It's top 10 for sure.
So, because you got your shafts and your superflies and blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. Most interesting thing about this, Roscoe Orman. Roscoe Orman, who plays Willie Dynamite, the pimpiest pimp of all pimps. He's the pimpiest pimp. Purple and gold Cadillac.
It is everything. I mean, it's just not to be believed. The style, I can't even imagine how they pieced all the cost, the car, everything.
Hey, the thing of it is, in 1974, you could buy that stuff pretty much anywhere.
But it is a look that goes above and beyond. It really does. It just is.
He out-pimps young priests from Superfly.
So
big
far.
Time. Also in this movie, the late Diana Sands, who was an extraordinary actress who I love to talk about all the time because she was one who she died young at age 36, but her career was going to be amazing. She would have been a Diana Carroll. Yeah. She was that good. Thelma's Rasula. Roscoe, were you all out there know Roscoe from? You know him from Sesame Street.
Oh, that's right.
That's Roscoe. Roscoe spent most of the rest of his career after playing the pimpiest pimp of all pimps on Sesame Streets, singing songs and dancing little dances with Groucho and all those guys. That's Roscoe. He's the brother with the mustache, the bald brother. And you probably know him more as a middle-aged man. Yeah. Check him out when he was young in 1974, playing Willie Dynamite, Roscoe Orman.
I had totally forgotten about that.
That's Roscoe, yep. Fantastic.
Crazy.
Oh, good stuff.
Warner Archive has 3 Blu-rays worth mentioning. One is The Thing from Another World, which is the Howard Hawks film with James Arness playing the kind of Frankenstein-y looking guy with the brow that was eventually remade into the John Carpenter movie, The Thing.
Yes.
Now in the John Carpenter movie, it's this weird thing that turns into other things, and it's not James Arness in makeup.
Yeah, it's not just a single.
It's a whole different deal. But there is something to be said for this. Now Howard Hawks produced this, did not direct it. It's a Howard Hawks production. He got it made. It's directed by Christian Nyby, who made a few other things. Has some really really good music by Dmitri Tiomkin, great composer. But for the most part, it's a studio-produced B-movie exploitation film, which comes with a certain amount of cred, and that cred being that Howard Hawks produced it and Charles Lederer wrote it. And it goes in there with the sci-fi films of this era. This is 1951, which all, even though they're a little dated, they do represent a certain sci-fi paranoia of the nuclear age. Yeah. We're afraid of Russians. We're afraid of atomic war. We're afraid of fill in the blank. The Chinese are up and coming. So it's a whole new paranoia, and the movies dovetailed from World War II patriotism in the 40s to all this kind of surrogate sci-fi paranoia in the 50s. And
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, This Island Earth.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of that. So in that sense, it's part of that corpus, and it's very, very interesting. Horror of Dracula, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. We've had a lot of these Hammer films in the last few weeks. This is on Blu-ray. It's just another one of those Hammer Dracula movies with Christopher Lee. They're all kind of the same. They all look the same. Christopher Lee really brings the same performance to all of them.
Yeah, and
it's good enough. I don't really know what the point is to making so many of these, but
it was a moment.
It was a moment.
Yeah.
The one I also really, really want to make mention of, this has been on DVD for a long time, never on Blu-ray, Errol Flynn in The Seahawk. They were going to try to remake this, I think, for a minute. One of Flynn's better swashbucklers, directed by Michael Curtiz, right before he made Casablanca. And has some amazing Eric Wolfgang Korngold music in it, just as many of the Flynn movies do, like Robin Hood, Adventures of Robin Hood. And this also had a screenplay co-written by Howard Koch, whose son, otherwise known as Hawk Koch, oddly enough, Seahawk, Hawk Koch, was head of the Academy a couple of times in the 90s. So some great special features on here, including a Warner Night at the Movies, 1940, hosted by our friend Leonard Maltin, and then some newsreels and a Porky Pig animated short. And then there's also a featurette on Errol Flynn and the Seahawk. It's a really fun swashbuckler. It's definitely worth checking out. All about Captain Jeffrey Thorpe and all of his adventures around the time of the Spanish Armada. Really, really fun film.
Good stuff.
And then we got some great ones on Criterion. Tim, look what we got.
Oh, the Magnificent Ambersons.
At long last.
That underrated Orson Welles film,
was taken away from him.
It was taken away from him, and even that was still a good movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So Criterion has given us a great trio this month. The Magnificent Ambersons from 1942, the follow-up to Citizen Kane, which is truly still one of Orson Welles' very, very best films. Because this is effectively kind of a semi-lost film, the extras here are so, so important. There's a Dick Cavett show on here from 1970 with Orson Welles. There are video essays. There are 2 different audio commentaries, which are so, so interesting. New video interviews with Simon Callow, the actor, who has tons to say on this, and Joseph McBride, who, of course, we know as well. He was in our documentary
Film
Schlock.
historian.
Great film historian Joe is. There's a 1978 AFI symposium on Orson Welles, which is here only in audio format. Interviews with Peter Bogdanovich talking to Orson Welles. There's a lot of stuff here. It is really, really, really interesting. And you'll learn so much about Orson Welles and the film just with this. This is as good as the film has ever looked. I'm thrilled about this.
Interesting that's coming out because The Other Side of the Wind, of course, is one that we were talking about.
On Netflix right now.
His last film, quote unquote, that Netflix got restored. Peter Bogdanovich did.
Yep.
So Orson, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other 2 here from Criterion are totally unexpected. One is an Abbas Kiarostami film called 24 Frames. A little bit avant-garde, actually more than avant-garde. It's
more avant-garde than he usually is.
Yes. Well, it's what he's trying to do is create the moments that happen before and after a photograph. And so he takes 24 different images, and then he does this kind of animation. He animates these vignettes for each one. It's I remember Mark saw this at Cannes and hated it. Absolutely with a passion. It's a lot of people were not enormously thrilled about this, but nonetheless, it has a certain cachet, and he recently left us. Abbas Kiarostami did. So in terms of Iranian cinema, it's a little bit more on the fringe, but it's worth checking out, and it gets a great Criterion treatment. And then the last Criterion is 1986's True Stories. Which was a one of those when David Byrne had his little moment doing some things with movies. He went and made this utterly weird kind of. It's this very strange look at Middle America.
In the middle '80s.
In the middle '80s,
John Goodman.
Way of looking at America in just through his own weird eyes. It's a little bit like if Albert Brooks had a looser screw, he would have turned American Romance into this.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it really is it's a fascinating film directed by David Byrne, starring David Byrne, and it's weird.
Kind of a road movie. He wanders around.
Co-written, by the way, with Stephen Tobolowsky.
Yeah. Who's the actor Stephen Tobolowsky.
Ned?
Okay. Ned Ryerson. Ned Ryerson. Groundhog Day, folks.
That's what he will forever be known as. Yeah. All right. Let's go on with the Mill Creek Rewind collection, which all have those cool VHS things, making their Blu-rays look like old VHS tapes. Tim, hit it. What do we got there?
It's a lot of fun because it looks like they're just barely pulling the VHS out. And what's terrible, I worked at one of these stores.
Yeah.
And with the VHS, I worked at a few of these stores, and this is giving me all kinds of horrible flashbacks right now. Terrible store managers, whatnot. Who's Harry Crumb? John Candy, the late great John Candy, who we lost quite a while ago now. John Candy was an extraordinary guy. Plays a sort of soft-hearted private detective. In this thing, Jeffrey Jones and Barry Corman and Annie Potts, the wonderful Annie Potts, and it's funny as hell. I had a crush on Annie Potts like you would need. The interesting thing about John Candy, big guy, who actually pulled off several times playing the main love interest.
Yeah, right.
Of the leading love interest.
Yeah,
and they would put these hot chicks opposite him, sometimes playing his wife or some girl or whoever it is that he's going to do it, and you'd always buy it.
It's true.
You'd buy it. You summer rental or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I buy it because he had this sort of odd charm.
He did.
And thing, yeah. What did he own? He owned some sort of Canadian sports team.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah,
It was like a D-League hockey team or something.
Like that. Anyway, all around great guy. Never met him myself.
Yeah, I didn't.
But I remember this movie and it was ridiculously funny. What's the set again? This is from the...
Oh, this is the Mill Creek Rewind Collection.
The Mill Creek Rewind Collection. Man, these are really giving me Hardbodies. I remember that this was the movie that was rated R at the time, and it was all these girls in these bikinis. Anyway, a couple of middle-aged guys moving to a beach house. They hired some young dude to sort of hang out with them and teach them how to stud it up, and it's just hot chicks in bikinis. This is one of the movies that made me want to move west.
Yeah,
you know,
I hear you.
Back in the day,
in that moment, and that Tom Cruise. What was the getting some?
Getting some,
whatever it was.
Joystick. So many of them. The Sure Thing.
Yeah.
Rob Reiner's second film.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris, Silent Rage. Man, this movie here. I'll tell you something about this movie. This is a really, really good movie.
I got a story about that movie.
You have a story about this movie?
I got a
story. When me and the wife went to see this movie.
Yeah.
First of all, we love this movie. This movie, despite it's a sci-fi movie about there's some wacky doctors doing this experiment on this corpse, and they turn him into this guy, and he's running around this little town. Chuck Norris with this big fat goofy deputy, and bodies dropping everywhere, and all this kind of. And Chuck has to go after this guy, and he keeps killing this guy, but he just won't die
because he's got the serum from the mad scientist.
Yeah, and it's the simplest thing in the world, but. Damn it! It just works.
So I saw this at the time. I was part of this club. It was like the Columbia Preview Club or something. So whenever they needed to get a focus group on a movie ahead of time to know how it might test, then I get my little thing in the mail. Hey, come on down to the screening. Come on down for a screening at the Columbia Preview Club, and we get free swag and stuff. And you go in, and it was always on the Warner lot. I don't know why. They were Columbia movies, I think it was, but they were always on the Warner lot anyway. So go over there, and I remember very well. We were sitting in that screening room in Building 38 or whatever. You know the one over off of on that one side. And we go in and we sit there, and I brought several friends who were also, we could each bring a guest, and then some of my friends were members of the club as well. So I think there were maybe 4 or 5 of us. And it didn't start well. Some of us sat closer to the screen than the others, and there were these jokes going on ahead of time, like, I was looking at the left side of the screen, I missed that. Right? We were just being dumb teenagers. And when the movie came on, we were thrilled because it was a Chuck Norris movie. We were Chuck fans. We're like, yeah, like the Octagon. And then suddenly, this guy who looks like Mick Jagger gets an injection of serum and becomes Superman, and he won't die. And Chuck's, dragging him behind. He's shooting him with a shotgun and dragging him behind trucks and all the rest of this. And the guy just keeps coming. Honestly, it was about halfway through the movie. Everyone in the theater, probably about 40 or 50 people in this screening room, everybody's talking at the screen. Making jokes. Who's around the corner? It went completely off the rails. The thing is, we all like the movie.
It's completely insane.
Yeah.
But you can't. And then it has that great last scene. And the movie's pretty old, folks. So I'm sorry if I'm going to blow this for you.
Yeah.
Where the dude comes up and he throws it down the well. and that's great. Freeze frame.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a sequel. Fabulous.
Never happened.
Never happened.
Yeah.
Never happened. And I just don't get it. By the way, they've been running this thing on television. 1982 film. They've been running this thing on television about every 20 minutes for the last couple of weeks. So every time in my apartment, I have like 15 televisions on at all times.
It's too funny.
So about every 20 minutes, I run into one of those. Happy Birthday to Me. I remember this one too from way back in the day. 1981 film, horror movie. Look. This isn't the best of this particular genre. This is okay. It's not. There were a lot better ones than this that were made. But Birthday Girl. She has an accident. She suffers from these blackouts, and the question is she going to become the next killer or something like that? I don't know. Whatever. It's okay. Not one of the best. These last two, Krull. I particularly wanted to save this and the next one because, for one thing, I absolutely loved Krull.
Peter Yates directed this and The Dresser in the same year.
Yeah.
So weird.
But it was a period where space or futuristic sort of operas were happening.
Yeah.
Hey, the Sean Connery made that weird one where he wore the big red diaper.
Oh yeah. Zardoz.
Zardoz and all that kind of stuff. So this one, mystical time and place, all kinds of creatures.
It's very much in the Star Wars pocket, in the Lord of the Rings pocket. It's that whole thing. And look, I mean, it's kind of goofy, but it's
still fun to watch.
It's still fun to watch, and it has a great James Horner score. And I don't often say those words together.
Yep. And this is pre-CGI.
Yes,
a lot of blue screen, green screen stuff going on here. Lots of makeup effects. Cyclops with that big one eye and all that kind of stuff, and some swords and some sorcerers. And sometimes I prefer it to give me this over the Lord of the Rings. 1993, Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Last Action Hero. Now this movie was a big flop.
Love this movie,
but I love it. Now I'm cheating. I love it. My wife's in it.
Yeah.
So I love it because my wife's in it. But I love it anyway. And this movie has some of the funniest dialogue. Just one-liners that are absolutely hysterical.
And it's really wise because it's Schwarzenegger and John McTiernan,
John McTiernan
reflecting on this genre in a very kind of philosophical way.
From all the way back in 1993.
Yeah.
Charles Dance in this movie, fantastic.
It's basically
Anthony Quinn.
It's basically an action film version of Sherlock Jr., the old Buster Keaton film.
Yeah.
And with a little bit from Purple Rose of Cairo and all that. You know, the Last Action Hero junket was one of the funniest things I ever attended. I was at that press day with my friend Bruce Kirkland, who's a film critic in Canada and a very, very good film critic. And Bruce, was a junkie guy. I mean, he'd been on the junkets forever. Everybody knew him. And Bruce, being a Canadian, dresses like a Canadian, so he had some vest on that had kind of like native Canadian designs on it, patterns on it, right? So he owns being a Canadian, and Schwarzenegger walks in, and the first thing he does is he walks up to Bruce, whom he's met before, and puts his hand out as if he's going to shake his hand, goes right past his hand to the vest and starts feeling the fabric, and he says, "That's a very nice curtain you're wearing. Do they make it for men too?"
It's just brutal.
It was brutal, but you know what? Everyone laughed. Bruce laughed. It was Arnold being Arnold, and he owned the room.
Arnold in 1991. I will tell you this: my wife told me that Arnold Schwarzenegger, because she had a scene with Arnold, that sometimes is when they play the movie in different versions, because different cuts in it. Sometimes it's in the movie, sometimes it's not in the movie. Because she's playing a hooker in the movie, because all black actresses had to play hookers
at that time.
At that particular time, she couldn't play anything else. She had a great scene with Arnold, and she told me that she used to hang out with Arnold and Arnold's trainer.
Yeah.
And there was a whole little group of them, and she said that Arnold was always just a perfect gentleman, just absolutely fantastic.
I see that.
So there you go, Arnold. My wife says so.
So we have an interview we're going to wrap the show out with. I want to hit a couple of docs, and then one of them will dovetail us into that interview. The first one is Love Gilda. Beautiful, beautiful Magnolia doc about Gilda Radner, tribute to Gilda Radner, and of course Gene Wilder. Really, that's all there is to it, man. If you don't know who Gilda Radner was or why you should care, one of the original not ready for primetime SNL players, just a beautiful human being, a funny woman, but a beautiful human being
associated with Gene Wilder. And when you look at Amy Poehler, any of the ladies,
they would not exist
but for Gilda Radner. Lots of important ladies. But they are the offspring of Gilda Radner.
She paved the way. From Kino Lorber, a great documentary called Iranian Cinema Before and After the Revolution. I am a huge fan of the Iranian New Wave, but there's so much here that I did not know, and it's a really, really, really great documentary. This is a 2-disc set. And it's basically it's a 3-part documentary, or 3 independent documentaries. Jamshid Akrami made the 3 different films that are made different periods of time, but they really do form one overarching look at the Iranian film industry, and it's absolutely superb. So Iranian cinema before and after the revolution. The 3 parts here is Friendly Persuasion, The Lost Cinema, and A Cinema of Discontent from 2013, which gets into much more recent stuff, and it's just so good, and so much information there. And then also have In the Land of Pomegranates, which is a wonderful doc from First Run Features about the Israeli-Palestinian affair through the eyes of Palestinian and Israeli teenagers, which gives you, like many of these films, a really dualistic look. You kind of have some hope for the future, but you also realize it's a really tall hill to climb. But the looking at it through the eyes of this generation as opposed to their parents or their grandparents' generation is very different, and they see the future in a very different way. Resistance at Tule Lake by Konrad Otterer is a story I had no idea about. I never knew this happened. This takes place, this is a Japanese internment camp documentary, but it is specifically about 12,000 who were interned at Tule Lake Segregation Center who resisted their internment. I had no idea that ever happened. It was like the slave revolts of the 17th and 18th century. It was that level of resistance, and it's really extraordinary. And some great extras on here as well, including an interview with the director. It really is. It's just it teaches you everything you need to know about that period and more. And then lastly, terrific documentary called United We Fan: The Fans That Shaped TV History. This goes back to an era that we don't really remember anymore because of social media and because TV is so fragmented. But it used to be that shows would get canceled, which was a routine thing, and then suddenly fans revolted, and you had grassroots letter writing campaigns that would save or resurrect or kind of
keep it alive.
Keep it alive.
They almost killed Cheers.
It's true, and it's really this is a wonderful doc. It interviews the fans, the stars, everybody who had any kind of any investment in this, and crucial part of this story, Bijo and John Trimble. If you don't know the name Trimble, you are not a Star Trek fan. Bijo Trimble and her husband are sort of the original grassroots of Star Trek fans, part of the original letter writing campaign to save Star Trek. And Bijo would go on to write some of the greatest Star Trek fan books ever, including the Star Trek Concordance, which I have proudly on my shelf, first edition to this day. So I had a chance to talk to Bijo and John and to talk about Star Trek and fandom and all of these related things, and it was a real thrill for me because I've just, since I was a kid, I've had Bijo Trimble books on my shelf, and so this was a wonderful chance to kind of revisit that and to talk to two really, really wonderful people. So here,
I'm so glad they include a Quantum Leap
on the front. Yes.
Yeah, my wife was in one of those too. Fantastic. I love it, man.
So without further ado, here is Bijo and John Trimble.
Thank you both for speaking with me this morning. So I'll get right to it. First of all, your books have had a treasured place on my bookshelf for I don't know how many decades. I don't want to make you feel old because it's going to make me feel old, but ever since I was a kid. So thank you for that, for so many wonderful opportunities to just be a part of the fan scene. Talk about this movie and how you guys got involved in it.
Okay, which movie?
Oh, United We Fan?
United We Fan,
okay, yeah. Well,
I'll tell you what, I'm going to move into the other room because I can hear her talking, and then the delay I can hear, So, go ahead.
So let me just ask again. So speaking today with John and Bijo Trimble, who've just been a huge part of my life for decades. Amazing books, just a wonderful, wonderful presence, especially in the Star Trek fan scene. Talk about how you guys got involved in the movie United We Fan.
Well, gosh, I have to tell you, I don't remember how we got introduced to Michael Sparga, but we did.
He contacted us.
Yeah, but who? Oh, all right. Then so somebody gave him our name and number and said, But anyway, yeah, and he presented the idea of they'd originally wanted to aim specifically for a television series with that featured fans, but not in a snarky way, and which would actually be a change, wouldn't it? And so we were interested, and they brought up two specifically, and one was toys, and the other was how we got things done.
So they came down to L.A., he and his crew, and wanted to film us, and kind of interview us and film us in various locations. Our house, of course. We're sitting in front of a bookcase with a Nautilus on top of it. And at a restaurant called Jake's, which Michael just absolutely fell in love with. Loves their barbecue sauce. And there's some opening scenes in the thing where we're walking into WonderCon, which is sort of the miniature version of Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, that's held in L.A. or in the L.A. area. So, and they were absolutely amazed at how we knew all those people.
Mm-hmm. The subject of the film is so interesting because I think people forget that as powerful as the letter writing campaign to save Star Trek was originally, it was unsuccessful. The show was still canceled, and but it was the beginning of something else. It sort of, that was the first, wasn't it? Wasn't that the first time that there was really people sensed that there was a surge of fan support for something outside of the world of just regular television viewers?
Well, yeah, and I would say it was not unsuccessful. The campaign got the show a third season.
Okay.
If it hadn't had a third season, by the standards of the 60s, it would not have gone into syndication.
Wow.
So because it had a third season, it went into syndication and has never been out of syndication since then.
That's a great point. Yeah. What made Star Trek special in terms of the fan support relative to other shows, and did that mark a turning point, do you think, for that has sort of brought us to where we are today?
Yes. Yes to all of the above. For one thing, Star Trek was offering mature science fiction, not yeet, there's another alien, let's kill it.
Yeah.
Which that was used in many of the other television series, and that was a whole, a carryover from the old 1950s movies,
Right.
And it was, Star Trek was the first adult series science fiction on television. There would been some, the shows that had been, done for adults rather than kids,
yeah,
were anthology shows. Twilight Zone, there were a couple of others that were done, but they were one-offs, that were done all through. This was the first time that anybody had done a continuing series with the same cast of characters as in an adult way, and it really grabbed us.
I know, from people that I've spoken to who remember the executive ranks at the studios and the networks back then, the idea that people could be so attached to a TV show that they would engage in letter writing and lobbying was something that really caught a lot of them by surprise. The conventional wisdom up until Star Trek was, well, you win some, you lose some, and the show's canceled, and you shed a tear and carry on. And they didn't realize that anything could become such a central part of someone's life outside of just passing the time on an evening. And I would argue that that's really when the Spielberg-Lucas era began, that we wouldn't have gotten to Jaws or Star Wars or Close Encounters or E.T. without the understanding that there is this kind of a fan base. Would you agree with that?
I think I would. Yeah.
Yeah, to a degree. I think that there were always, scary stories like Jaws or something, but and there were certainly the old horror things, but there was not a fan base that revealed itself. Now, there was a huge fan base for like the horror movies and so on, but they just discussed it, amongst themselves. There was never any reason for them to speak up about it, and so it was really kind of a novelty to have people show such interest, to be so intense about it, and I don't think it was was expected at all. And bless their hearts, the powers that be were not at all prepared for the loud clamoring from fans.
Yeah.
And of course,
we surprised the empty suits is what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was about it. So, but we never thought about it like that. We knew that there had been any former efforts like this, that it was really just pardon me, was not something that had made much of a splash. So if there is anybody out there who did it before we did, I don't want to denigrate them for sure. So
looking back on it, is there anything that you think could have been done differently, should have been done differently? This is almost like political organizing for the arts in a way. And it was, you're sort of inventing it as you go along. If you were to do it all over again, would you do it the same way?
Well, no, not today, because we're talking 50 years ago when there were no personal computers unless you were terribly rich, and things were just very, very different. We were mailing everything. We were hand addressing.
We were doing it on mimeograph. And mailing everything out, and asking people to write letters and copy the information and send it to 10 friends and have them write letters and have them do the same thing. So and you don't have to do it that way these days.
But is there something about the ease of, what you're talking about is effort, and when during those days that represents an effort on the part of the fans, and today anybody can create a change.org poll, and it seems like it's very easy to get, and there's so many polls and there's so much activity today. Is it easy to take it for granted? Do you think that the way that was done at the time with the letter writing campaign, that the amount of effort that clearly required made it special, made it stand out in ways that today it wouldn't?
Well, I guess so in a way, but today, don't denigrate the people who do efforts now, because frankly, it takes very special people to get off their fat apathy and get something done.
Good point. It
really does. I mean, let's face it. There ought to be something we could do about that. Okay, let's do.
Right.
Which is what I said to her.
But people don't want it. They're perfectly willing. What they really mean is there ought to be something you guys could do about it.
Yeah. But
not me. And that's happening everywhere. It happens in politics, and that's as far as we're going to go on that subject.
Yeah.
And, happens everywhere where people want to stand back and
let somebody else do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to get involved, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't even getting involved. They'd be perfectly willing to get involved for the most part if they did not have to do anything about it. Yeah. If they didn't have to speak up, if they didn't have to write letters, if they didn't have to this. And today, yes, it still takes writing letters because you have to go on that computer and you have to now, granted it's easier, but you have to go on this computer and type up your contact letter, give everybody some suggestions on how to write a letter but without copying you, and that kind of thing, and then send it out. And then be ready. This is something that an awful lot of people don't plan on, and when it happens, they're sort of startled. And that is when when people start writing you and saying, what else do I do, or what can I, and you've got to start answering mail. This is something that a lot of people aren't ready for, and it just, So, but can it still be done? Oh yes. I mean, look at the people who recently have managed to speak up and just blow the people away who are on the on the show. And by the way, here's another thing that's changed. Back when we were doing it, we couldn't even let Gene Roddenberry play through, and that drove him crazy because all producers are control freaks, and the actors were afraid to get involved because they felt it might be detrimental to their career. Well, nowadays, evidently, they don't care because many of the newer campaigns we were very pleased to see had the people that were involved in the show, the people who acted in the show, helping out and cheering them on, and if nothing else, just being cheered on helps a little bit. It helps a whole lot. So anyway, that's one of the changes that we see now.
Let me start to wrap up with this question. I know it's one you've been asked a million times before, so I will try to phrase it in a way that makes it a little bit fresh. Star Trek is the single most significant media phenomenon in American history. The only thing that comes close and that rivals it is Doctor Who across the pond. It has been continuous from the 1960s to the present. Perhaps with a small blip there when it after it was canceled and before Star Trek: The Motion Picture came out, when everyone was lobbying for it and there were conventions galore. In which case, it still isn't. It's more in the public consciousness than ever. It has not left us. It's proliferated. It's still on TV. There are still movies. It's remarkable the penetration that Gene Roddenberry's creation had then, has continued to have, and does still have. What is it, if you could distill that down in this incredibly convoluted media environment we have today, where there's so much product and people can choose anything, it still has a place, a prominent place. What is it? What's the secret ingredient, if there is one, or is there even a secret ingredient? Is it many ingredients?
Many. Back when it first started, one of the things was it was basically a substitute for family. This was the 1960s. Many youngsters felt very alienated from their family. They just they needed something where there was a family. And this was interesting because in those days there weren't so much the groups. If there was a group of actors in one show, there weren't so many of them that were family. They liked each other.
Well, at least the cast weren't family in that sense, being related. They all interacted in the same way that a family would interact. And a lot of the shows that were on where there was a family, they were always putting down one member of the family. The bumbling husband, the flighty housewife, whatever. And while there was a little interaction between, say, McCoy and Spock on Star Trek, it was all in good humor and in obviously loving relationship. And that was an important point that is often overlooked by people who look at the show and try to figure things out. It was this warmth and this ease of interaction between the characters. I think that's one of the things that makes Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, such a popular one with fans, is because you had that interaction again between the characters in the same way that they're similar to the way it was on the TV show. And it's tremendously appealing for that.
Do you believe there is something that, and I'll lead you on this question. I am always frustrated by the fact that even though we're allegedly in the quote-unquote golden era of television, it seems to me that the lessons that you just outlined have still not been learned by the majority of people who are out there spending now tens of millions of dollars making television shows. They still haven't learned the ingredients. They don't understand the secret sauce all these decades later. Would you agree with that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I sometimes want to, if I had the money, take out a huge ad in whatever it is producers and directors read and say, there are millions of good science fiction stories out there. For heaven's sake, don't keep copying everything else. You know? But it doesn't. You know, it's I don't know if that would help me at all anyway. So, but.
Well, it every little bit helps, and it's just so great to have this movie out there, to have you guys out there still carrying the torch. I cannot thank you enough, and thank you for speaking with us, and best of luck with everything.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.